In the age of the internet and what Bo Burnham so aptly labeled as, "Can I interest you in everything all of the time?" it's hard to believe that there are some things people don't talk about. Secrets that are being kept. We're going to be talking about that in this video. So here we go. What's your "we will never speak of this again" moment? Story 1. I have 2 sets of cousins that we really have those moments with. I usually vlog some of these moments and share it only with them. Anyway, one set we go on vacation with every year, and the other we go visit their house every few months for family gatherings. First story is first set. Me and the boys, we were in high school. I was a freshman. One was a sophomore, and the third homie was a junior. We went up to a resort in the Wisconsin Dells and basically messed around in the third homie's room when we weren't busy. We had late-night talks about life that we don't talk about outside our conversations with each other and the group chat. Nothing we can't share, but everything we don't share. The deep talks about life. Well, the last night we were at the resort before heading home, the third homie grabbed 3 balloons, one for each of us. It was 11:36 p.m. CST. And next thing we know, we're squeaking balloons as loud as we can while people in rooms around us were getting out of their beds and probably filing room complaints. We had a blast that night, popped balloons and scared people, and somehow didn't get kicked out. Well, as for the second set of cousins, it was the weekend of my birthday. My oldest cousin's boyfriend took me and my cousin, my age, to Walmart to mess around. We messed around with the unlocked phones, being dumb teenagers. We were being dumb and having fun. When we got back to the house, we played ghosts in the graveyard for a few hours straight, and my uncle is absolutely terrifying when he plays. After the ghosts in the graveyard game, we found a lighter in the garage and proceeded to light random stuff on fire. It started with leaves and sticks, and then me and my cousins got curious. We then burnt a Walmart bag. And then we found an old Tickle Me Elmo toy, beat up and barely functioning. The thing looked like it had been run over. So our dumb horse teenager idiocy got the Elmo, took one last video of him laughing, but I kept it rolling. They didn't know that I filmed the entire time. I have the tape somewhere on a hard drive. We set Elmo on the driveway. It's 2 a.m. by now. My cousins couldn't forget to get the gasoline and douse Elmo with it. And then we got kitchen tongs to activate Elmo while he's burning, and then we did it. My cousin pressed his foot, and she quickly backed away while I lit his arm, and he went ablaze in less than a second. As Elmo began rolling on the ground, the fire spread rapidly, and the animatronic inside began to melt. I only had to reactivate him once, and as he was laughing, his laughing suddenly dropped to a deep, distorted laugh, and my cousins were terrified. My smart head knew that the plastic melting was messing with the circuit board, and Elmo didn't laugh much longer until he was completely gone. We then put Elmo out, and now he's in the ditch. We then went back inside, and I connected my phone to a giant Bluetooth speaker. I began blasting inside jokes within the family, certain sound effects and quotes from YouTube. One well-known, the giant horse conch weighs over 11 pounds. We then began blasting anything we could to get each other to laugh, while waking everyone else in the house. We all ended up crashing in the living room at 6 a.m. that morning. We woke up at 2 p.m., and we then agreed that that was the night we kept to ourselves and don't mention to anything else. Not even in the group chat. I should try bringing up the night sometime to my cousins to see how they react. This one isn't really all that nefarious. Unless that Elmo belonged to someone that they knew that they were trying to hide it from, or a younger sibling, it doesn't seem all that tragic. Picturing an animatronic Elmo on fire reminds me of that Helmo meme. Or of Elmo being the Dread Pirate Roberts in The Princess Bride.
The Dread Pirate Elmo has come for your souls!
Story 2. The spicy toy known as the wand was invented as an automatic potato masher. After nearly 150 years, it still has never changed its design. It grew out of fashion to use for potatoes because women used it for spicy time too many times, and it got a bad reputation. They still would in fact be one of the best potato mashers you can use. It's just no one uses them for their actual intended purpose. Well, Me and a friend years ago saw a package labeled for his sister, and his sister said she was expecting only one package that month. His sister ordered him an item for a video game because she owed him for doing her part of the house chores, so he was hoping to get the video game stuff. Instead, it was the wand. I was a weird nerd and the internet was new at the time, and I found out it was called a potato masher from looking at old technology. It worked great. She was ticked off that we used it for mashing potatoes, and their dad walked in to see us mashing potatoes with it and asked where we got the potato masher and said, well, thought it was the video game stuff, but it was this. My friend's dad thought it was funny we were using it for that and showed us a catalog to order one in the mail from around the 1920s, and it was called a potato masher as well. Me, my friend, and his dad all knew it had two uses, but we used it for the not disgusting reason. His sister did not want to admit it was the real reason she bought it. She wanted to throw it away, but her dad took it out of the trash and mocked her for it for a few months before hiding it in a shoebox under her bed for her to use. This one seems like the opposite of we'll never speak of this again. This is more like we will speak of this very often and as much as we possibly can to anyone we know. I'm sure the woman really wishes no one would speak of it. Did they at least wash the thing before they gave it back to her? Story 3. I remember back in high school, I was actually able to walk to my house during lunch because I lived so close. Me and my buddy would go in the shed in the backyard and get absolutely stoned every day. I remember coming out of the shed with a huge cloud of smoke flowing out, and my mom standing there after bringing some scraps to the chickens. I remember her saying one thing and one thing only. Not during school, and we never spoke of it again. She knew I was smoking weed for years and never said a thing. She was fine with it and probably expected it, considering my brothers all did the same thing. I'm sure glad she never told my dad. And goodness, that story about the horse video brought up a memory. I remember when I used to pick on this guy we knew back in school. We were in the computer lab and my friend went over to his computer while he was away. He pulled up a video of a horse plowing a woman. Back then, I don't think ad blocker was even a thing, but the kid got back and basically couldn't exit out of the site because of all the pop-up ads. They suspended him and actually made him start seeing the school counselor. We were some real bad kids for sure. I hope he's doing well these days. I made sure to apologize for all of the bullying we gave him. Okay, here's a proper we'll never speak of this again. And this one was actually a pretty positive one. I think it was great that the mom set some boundaries on this activity she knows was going to happen anyway. As long as they stuck to the agreement, I don't see a problem with it. Heck, they weren't even smoking inside the house and getting the smell in there. Everyone just being considerate all around. Story 4. A female friend of mine once called me crying. Her ex-boyfriend was being a jerkwad. For context, they were still sleeping together. I, being her usual shoulder to cry on, meet up with her to comfort her and all that. Then she tells me she doesn't want to go back to his apartment and hers is quite far, so we head back to my place. She had already mentioned previously that she has slept with guy friends platonically, as in cuddle buddies, and so we both got into bed and chatted until we were both sleepy. Nothing weird happened. Some hugs here and there before going to sleep. We both stayed on our side of the bed. I fall asleep. A few hours go by, and all of a sudden I feel someone grab me by the shoulder and then start kissing me passionately. I hold her face and do the same. We made out for a good 10 seconds before she pulls away, gasps, and starts crying. Still half asleep, I ask her what's wrong, and she says, "I'm sorry. I've been sleeping with him for so long I thought you were him." She left early in the morning and asked me to never mention it. Too long didn't read? A friend of mine mistook me for her ex, and we made out for 10 seconds in the middle of the night. Story 5. When I was younger and figured out I was interested in BDSM, I started doing self-bondage. Started light and slowly got more into it. Well, one day I decided to do a bit of it and tied a rope around my elbows behind my back. Boy, howdy, did I pull them too tight because I got stuck. Like, for a while. I tried so hard to get out, used my environment. I could hardly move around since I decided to tie my legs together first, trying to get just any kind of leverage on the rope that was slowly cutting off my circulation. Nothing worked, and I was getting kind of scared. The rope was not the kind you should use for bondage, and I was a dumb kid and didn't have a pair of scissors nearby to cut the rope with. My arms had gone numb, so I did the only thing I could do at this point. I called for help. Who was I living with at the time? My parents. I certainly remember the disappointment in her voice, but because she was behind me, I didn't have to see it on her face. Best believe we have never talked about it since. Story 6. Way back when I went to take my quick morning shower before high school. My 1-year younger sister usually gets in the shower more than an hour before me, hair and other girl things. So I went to the bathroom half groggy, assuming, as I usually do, that she's in her room, with an added feeling of safety because no bathroom light was on and the door was locked. So I flung the door open, almost like a game show reveal. And behind door number 1 is your completely naked sister staring straight at you. Time slows, and I think, why? Does she normally walk naked through the hallway before I wake up and I just happen to catch her as she was headed to her room? As my face contorts to a confused grimace in 0.5 seconds. The remaining 0.5 seconds was my gaze dropping to the bottom right, the direction of my bedroom. I literally didn't even turn my body. I walked diagonally to my room and closed the door. I waited till I heard her bedroom door close seconds later and resumed my morning routine. Thankfully, she never brought it up because I certainly wasn't going to. Ain't no awkward nudity like sibling awkward nudity. I can understand getting so caught up in your routine that you weren't expecting this to happen. I'm pretty sure that after this there were some protocols put into place. A little bit of vocalization announcing your presence. Something like that would get stuck into place for a long time. Story 7. So in my group, I am the only one openly into men. I'm bisexual, and one New Year, a buddy of mine whom I had a crush on at the time was throwing a small party. Really more of just friends getting together. Well, after a couple of hours of drinking, most of us were getting there, I was drunk-faced. My brother had decided he wanted to do push-ups after chugging a bottle of Henny. Our other friend, not the one I was crushing on, was giving the usual, "I love you, bro," speech, and the dog had just peed on the fourth friend. Well, I was full of liquid courage, so I sat up, looked at the friend I had a crush on, and professed my feelings and asked them out. Of course, he said no, so we just continued on with the fun. When we were all sober the next day, we agreed to never speak of it again, and so we haven't. Glad to say it never made it awkward. I no longer have feelings for him, by the way.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 8. We are both conservative Christians. In particular, saving intimacy for marriage was an important thing. At least, that's what most of our group would say. A group of us were hanging out, and the host, single/unmarried, wanted to show me something on his computer. As he is pulling it up on his computer, I noticed something and said, "What is that?" On his desk, next to his keyboard, was an unopened condom. This guy is one of the jokers of our group. He was always ready with a quip or joke about every situation. Except this time. The only thing he said was, Realizing he did not have a joke or excuse about it, and I had no intention to hold it over his head, he was a cool guy, I just calmly said, "Let's just forget that I saw that." He, again, uncharacteristically, silently nods, and we go back to what we were doing. The guy was also a little weird, and I was a little naive, so I would have believed anything he said. Story 9. I DM'd for a group of friends in college. My best friend Kristen invited her best friend to the group. Her best friend was smoking hot, out of everybody's league. Had a specific type for nerdy guys with beards who were tall. Me, and me. Her friend and I hooked up a year later when I helped Kristen move into her new place. To which, after our night, when we laid in bed, she lit a cigarette, exhaled, and said, "Kristen will never know about this." We continued meeting up for months. I even took her daughter to school. I didn't want a relationship. The intimacy was good. Her daughter was funny and cool as hell, too. Her daughter also kind of understood I wasn't going to be around, so I was just being as respectful as I could. We never got into any fights. No ill blood. We didn't want it to go any further. That was over 4 years ago, and we still talk on Discord and have had more D&D games since. Kristen still doesn't know. This reminds me of that song Scotty Doesn't Know from that movie Eurotrip, except it's slightly less malicious. I'm not sure why she didn't want her best friend to not know about this. Does Kristen have feelings for this guy? Is that another secret here? I believe it's true that girls are far more detailed about their intimate lives with each other than guys are. So when this girl says she doesn't want Kristen to know about this, there must be a really interesting reason. Story 10. One time, my parents were both at work and it was summer. Since they were both at work, I decided to smoke a few joints. When I realized my mom would get home soon, I decided I had to clean up the kitchen. When I was cleaning, I made a single mistake. I had cleaned the counters off and put the dishes away. I took my half-smoked joint back to my room and threw away the old ones in my bathroom. I'm surprised I didn't fix that up. But when I was cleaning the kitchen, instead of cleaning off the cutting board, I had messed up and flipped it over and ended up cleaning the bottom instead. My mom came home and noticed it was upside down, so she flipped it back and saw the ashes on the board. She looked at me without talking and went back to what she was doing. Story 11. My crush played a prank on me. Right after I told her my dad was cheating on my mom, she pretended to like me and called me her boyfriend. I was under so much emotion, I thought she was serious. The next day, she discovers that my dad cheated on my mom the same day she pranked me because of my friend. She said it was a prank, which lowered my mood to about 0. I stay silent, and she says, "Don't tell anyone about this." I then proceeded to tell everyone I knew. I felt she deserved the embarrassment for her act. Oh, I forgot to talk about the part where she said she was drunk and said to her friends, "Shut up, my boyfriend's having daddy issues." Who would say that? I'm starting to think she was on something that night. Story 12. I was at a parent-teacher conference in high school. My dad to my left and my mom to my right, being divorced since I was little. I was telling my dad something, and he didn't believe me, so I said, "Look it up on Google." I couldn't do it myself since I had my phone taken for bad grades. So he's taking his time, so I say, "Give me that, and I'll do it," and take his phone. I open up the tab so I can open a new tab, then freeze for a split second. I notice an orange PH in a black box. I instantly create a new tab to hide what's there. I don't know if my mom noticed, nor if either of them noticed that I noticed. I just proceeded as if I didn't see it. Nobody brought it up. Ever. I don't know about you, but nobody touches my phone. No one. If I show someone a funny picture, I'm holding the phone. I'll do my best to keep it as steady as possible so I'm not just waving it around so they have to adjust. The one that's worse than this is when I'm showing someone a picture that I've taken and they reach out a finger to swipe. What are you swiping for? The picture I'm showing you is the one I'm showing you. What made you think there were multiple pictures of this? Story 13. I remember desperately trying to get to a bathroom at Walmart, but I accidentally went into the girls' bathroom. First person I see is an old lady who doesn't scream. She just widens her eyes and mouths a gasp. I apologize like 3 times in under a second, then left. Saw another lady right outside the bathroom door, and I told her that I accidentally went in the bathroom. I didn't want her freaking out. She laughs at me, which honestly made me feel relieved. I went straight to the men's room, and it was dirty as heck compared to the women's room. I just dealt with it, but as I washed my hands, I was like, how come women always have it better? Story 14. The corn Cold War scenario happened to a friend of mine, but with some weed. His wife found the weed, they scolded the son, and then threw it in the bin, only for my friend to retrieve it later because, and I quote, "That was some of the best-smelling weed I'd seen in years." He'd stashed it in his room somewhere with the usual paraphernalia, and we had smoked the odd fatty of an evening if we were hanging out. One day he went to retrieve the stash, only to find it was gone, and noticed that obvious stink on his son the next day. He asked me how I thought he should handle it, and I said he had no option but to let it slide. Story 15. I kissed a boy on the bus in kindergarten because I thought it was an expression of caring about someone. For context, I live in the U.S., where it's not customary to kiss someone as a greeting. To be fair, anybody ever watch Letterkenny? To be fair, I was never taught kisses were for family and loved ones. I was only taught they were to show someone you care. He told the bus monitor, she told my parents, I got a talking to. My parents would mention it a few days later, telling me not to kiss any boys. But it was quickly dropped. Neither I, my parents, the monitor, nor the boy mentioned it ever again. I'd like to believe they forgot about it, but I don't think so. Story 16. It's not really something big, but I used to date my then crush/best friend. We were out in their neighbor's porch playing with their cats. At that point, I knew I had never had my first kiss, but I decided to mention it again in the hopes that he would do it. He told me he hadn't either, but that was it. A few minutes later, we were talking, and I asked him if he could kiss me. Bad idea. It was the most embarrassing thing I've ever went through. We have both agreed to never speak of this again, but he does bring it up a few times as a joke. It does make me uncomfortable, but it's funny, so yeah. And yes, we're still best friends to this day. Story 17. It's not me, but a friend in Discord while talking to me said something like this to me, and we had the same profile picture because, I don't know, she wanted me to have the same one as her. So as we're talking in a group, she suddenly says, I'll be the great choice you ever made. And if you know how that looks and sounds, then you know my reaction to this, and just going to say her ex-boyfriend was in the group and was obviously not fully over it. So I had to full-on explain what it sounded like for around 10 minutes. And when she realized, she deleted the message and wanted me to change my profile picture. Story 18. Not me, but my friend. We were in a study group when my friend told me what he did last weekend. He was a Boy Scout and had a camping trip with other Boy Scouts from neighboring countries. It was the middle of the night and he was going to use the toilet. When he opened the door, he did not expect another Boy Scout to be in there doing his business. Surprised, the guy turned while spraying the toilet with lemonade and ran out the door. The next day, my friend found him and both agreed to not talk about it for the entire trip. Best story I heard that day. Story 19. Once my bathroom was under construction, so I had to shower in my parents' bathroom. I was mid-washing my hair when my dad came in. He thought my mom was the one using the shower, and he didn't see me for a few seconds. He was walking around for a solid 3 seconds as I was frozen in place, trying to figure out what in the heck to do. He finally looked at the shower, saw me, walked out as he said, sorry. I was very careful not to look at him as I was leaving. Story 20. Back in the day when I was in love with my first girlfriend, at her house in the middle of the night, I had to go downstairs to the bathroom. I always sleep naked, and went down the stairs, walking in the hallway. I realized someone was inside the kitchen. It was her mother. She had no underwear on, and a completely see-through shirt. We stood there for like 3 seconds, not saying a single word, just looking at each other, before I bolted back up. We never said a word. I think we were both impressed. Story 21. I was in year 6. We had this thing at the end of the year where we did country dancing for some odd reason, and we were randomly assorted partners. I was paired with the most popular girl in the school. To note, I was relatively unpopular at the time. We both looked each other in the eyes and consecutively agreed that we would never speak of this again. Story 22. My brother and I were in charge of fixing the living room furniture around when we lifted a picture shelf too quickly and made a hole in the wall. We put the shelf in front of it and didn't say anything about it to each other or anyone until we moved. We really only got lucky our mom liked the furniture arrangement enough to not want to rearrange it again.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.